The last part that we're going to do for this chapter deals with once we collect our data, how do we organize it? So let's look at a few terms first. We have a frequency, which we need to define, and that's how many times an answer occurred. Our relative frequency is the percent or decimal or fraction that an answer occurred. And if this does not round, then what we do is we typically round it to 4 decimal places. So what usually happens is either if our percent was 50%, that rounds to 0.50. But if we had a fraction like 3/11ths, for example, that does not round, and so we round it to 4 decimal places. So just keep that in mind. And then we have cumulative relative frequency, which is an accumulation of the percent that occurred at that value or lower. We will go over an example of all of these next. And these are the 3 main terms that we are going to cover right now. All right, let's look at a survey here. We surveyed 50 students and we asked them how many books were in their backpacks. This is the information that we received. So I've organized this into a table and you can see the responses. 11 students had 1 book in their backpack. 10 students, that's the frequency, had 2. 16 had 3, and so on all the way to 6. If we sum up the frequency column, we should end up with 50. So you usually want to double check that. 11 plus 10 plus 16 plus 6 plus 5 plus 2 does equal 50. The last 2 columns that we need to construct are the relative frequency. You can see I started it, and we're going to finish it right now. So let's take a look at how we calculate the relative frequency. What we do is we take the frequency 11 divided by the total number of students that were surveyed. 11 divided by 50, and you get 0.22. You do the same thing down the column. So this would be 10 divided by 50 equals 0.2. We would do 16 divided by 50 equals 0.32. And this is 0.12. This 5 divided by 50 is 0.10, and 2 divided by 50 is 0.04. So one thing you do want to do with the relative frequency is we need to make sure that if we would add up this whole column, we're going to get 1, or 100% of our responses. And the last column that we have is cumulative relative frequency. This is an accumulation of all of our data. How we read this is we would say now 22% of our answers were 1 or below. And then 42% of our answers are 2 or below, meaning 2 or 1. So how do we get this number? There are a few different ways. One way is to take 11 plus 10, add it up, it's 21 divided by 50, and you get 0.42. Or we can add the 2 relative frequencies together, 0.22 and 0.20, and you get 0.42. Or we could take the previous cumulative relative frequency and add it to the current. So 0.22 plus 0.20. 0.42, I'll type this out for you, 0.42 plus 0.32. And we get 0.74. And then 0.74 plus 0.12 equals 0.86. And then this one is 0.96. And this one is 1. Remember that when we add all of the cumulative relative frequency together, we want it to be a total of 1 or 100%. So just to summarize this, here we have a survey where we have collected quantitative discrete data. We recorded the frequency, the relative frequency, and the cumulative relative frequency. The frequencies add up to how many people were surveyed. The relative frequency is 100%. The cumulative relative frequency is an accumulation of each value, and what percent of the data is that value or below, and also totals 100%.